Hi guys, today I'm really excited to have Aliza here, who is a legal advisor at Duolingo. I think it's going to be very interesting for us to hear her perspective on being an international student, helping us ask the right questions when you're in the recruiting space. So Aliza, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Hi, as I introduced, my name is Aliza. I'm the legal advisor for immigration at Duolingo. My work focuses on ensuring that everybody who works at Duolingo who has an international background, has work authorization, and how to provide everybody a safe path for a long-term opportunity to live and work in the US. My decision to work at Duolingo, which in itself is a mission-driven company, was motivated highly by the fact that there was a huge priority in making sure that we prioritized the work authorization, the confidence, the ability to long-term live in the US of everyone, and we provided the right kind of support and guidance throughout that process.
I love that. If I could ask, what was your motivator behind pursuing law as a career? So one step pre-Duolingo.
I've always enjoyed it. I always find that law is a way to find a solution. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but I think used in the right way, it can provide a lot of solutions. I also think it's very empowering as a woman to pursue law.
I love that. And were you yourself an international student or were you a US citizen?
So I am originally from Pakistan. That's where I was born and raised. That's where my primary education was. I came to the US for graduate school. I attended law school at UPenn.
Okay, super cool. So one of the big questions that the most number of students are asking us is when they're going to the recruiting question, they want to ask the question, do you sponsor to their potential employer? So to start, do you have any guidance around how they should address it if they're a STEM major versus a non-STEM major?
First of all, I'll clarify, this is not legal advice. Please reach out to your attorneys for those purposes. I always encourage people to be honest because let's say you go through the entire recruitment process and at the end of the day, you find out you've been interviewing with a company that does not sponsor or is not able to take you on as an international student. You've suddenly wasted a lot of time on your end, but you've also wasted a lot of time at their end. And it gets people nowhere. At the end of the day, if you've not been 100% honest to the best of your knowledge and ability on that employment application, a company can reject you just based on that. And I also think it leaves a bad taste in the employer's mouth for not just you, but other international students. And it's generally a disservice.
Do you feel like there's any difference between the do you sponsor question for STEM versus non-STEM, or do you take it as like the same situation?
I take it as the same situation. I think the more honest and upfront you are, the if you, yeah, I'll take a step back and I'll say this. As an international student, I definitely think that you should pursue all your goals and dreams, but I also think you should prioritize working for a company that holds your work authorization, immigration related interests very near and dear. So if you're interviewing with a company and you're not comfortable being upfront about your work authorization status, then it's probably not the best fit whether you're a STEM major or you're not a STEM major.
No, I think that's such a great piece of advice because students, in the end of the day, when they come to the US, for the most part, if your goal is really to stay, live, and work in the US, you want to be transparent about that so your company can support you. At what point do you think students should bring it up? I know you said as early on as possible, but let's say you're at like a recruiting fair, or is it when you get the interview or when you're doing an online application? Is there, a specific touch point that's most recommended in your opinion?
A lot of companies ask the question as part of their employment application, and I encourage everybody to be honest at that point. If a company does not ask that, I think you should feel comfortable enough to bring it up during the first chat, like, hey, is this something you guys offer? Because at the end of the day, if you get the offer from a company and they cannot offer you anything beyond your OPT or STEM OPT, then that is not a company that is willing to employ you long term. So at the end of the 1 year or 3 years, if you still have nothing, no work authorization, then have you really achieved what your goal was from this employment?
Exactly. Could you touch a little bit more on that? So let's say an employer has hired you and they know you are, for example, a STEM major or a non-STEM major, and they've said, yes, Aliza, we're going to put you in the lottery. What do you think is missing in terms of asking the right questions for you to be sure that they're there to support your long-term goals?
I think if an employer is willing, I think once the offer is made, so I think obviously be upfront from the very beginning that, hey, do you sponsor? What is the plan, etc. But once the offer is in your hand, I think it's very okay to say like, hey, can you connect with me with the individual? If I accept the offer, will be responsible for my immigration, for my work authorization paperwork, and then ask that person a bunch of questions like, when is the first H1B lottery? You will obviously start with the very basic. Are you registered with E-Verify if you are
Your
looking
STEM
to?
major.
Yes. And then going on to, hey, what's the first H1B lottery you will put me into? Because obviously there is a limited number of H1B lotteries that you will be eligible for during that work authorization for OPT or STEM OPT period. So making sure that you will be entered every time you're eligible, right? I think that's a great starting point. For a lot of candidates, they can be entered actually even before they graduate. So let's say you are an OPT, you don't have STEM OPT, right? Well, if you have signed on to be an employee before the lottery takes place, so just to make it more realistic, I'll give some dates. I'll just throw out some dates.
Sure.
Let's say you've signed the offer February 1st, lottery is happening March 1st, you're going to graduate May 1st. Will they put you in that March 1st lottery? Ask them that question, irrespective of whether you're in your undergrad or grad school or PhD. Ask them that question. Will you be eligible for every lottery afterwards? I think the second line of questioning is, okay, when are you going to start my green card process? Are there any internal requirements? Like, do I have to be employed for at least 6 months? Do I at least have to be a level X employee to be sponsored for the green card? A lot of companies have internal policies where you have to be employed for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, or you must be selected in the H1B lottery before they'll start your green card process. And if you are interviewing with that kind of a company, then you need to know that, okay, it's all up in the air. There's no predictability. At Duolingo, we do things very differently. We start the green card process for candidates as early as possible. We're very upfront with the candidate. We put them in each H1B lottery that they're eligible for. We're obviously registered with E-Verify, so we can take advantage of the OPT STEM OPT. And I think that for the business end provides the company the certainty that we're doing everything we can, but for the individual, for the immigrant, for the student, it gives a lot of peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And any employee will not be doing their best work if they're not at peace internally. And I think immigration takes a huge emotional toll on people. And I think that if your employer is not supportive, if your employer is not reaching out and doing 110%, then it's the employee who ends up suffering in addition to the employer.
Yeah, I think that's great. I can just add in a personal anecdote from my process. I think because I was in a boat where I knew that there wasn't as much of a long-term future, although I was focused on my job, there were definitely other things going on in my mind, or what other opportunities can I look for? Like, where else can I secure a long-term future? And then you're distracted and not putting in your 110% in terms of working and being fully concentrated. So I think that resonates so much with me. If I had that peace of mind, I would be a lot more dedicated and I wouldn't be wavering in my mind. When it comes to the
add one more thing,
sorry,
if
go
that's
ahead.
okay.
Yeah.
I think another important question to ask is, if I go through the 3 years of work authorization, and this is very common for Chinese and Indian natives, if I go through the 3 years of work authorization, OPT plus STEM OPT, I'm not selected in the H1B lottery. And because of the built-in wait time for Indian and Chinese natives, I don't have the green card in my hand, even though as an employer, you have done everything you can. what happens then? Will you relocate me to another location in another country and eventually bring me back on the green card, continue to enter me in the H1B lottery, or will you let me go? Because you don't, I mean, I would not want to be at an employer who's like, well, we did everything we can, so 3 years have passed, and now we're going to let you go. I would rather be at an employer that says, well, we have a location in, well, you're in Dubai, so I'll give the example. You're in that, we have a location in Dubai where we'll move you temporarily. We'll continue to enter you in the H1B lottery. We'll continue to pursue the green card. And whenever you're eligible, you'll be able to come back.
And in your opinion, these questions are something that are acceptable to be asked early on, and after you've accepted an offer at the least, and you can start engaging in these conversations?
I would say ask them before you accept the offer.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you have accepted the offer of a company and they then tell you, sorry, we're not going to do anything, then that's where you've ended up. At Duolingo, we're very upfront. I talk to, I would say 99.9% of the candidates and explain to them what the process is. We believe in like having a plan A, plan B, plan C for everyone, but I know every company is not like that. And knowing that not every company is like that, I think the international students have to be more cautious of the decisions they're making in terms of employment.
I 100% agree. I think something that always comes in my mind is big tech or like really big companies or big names. It's very easy to chase those. Maybe you're chasing a salary, like your mind is wavering in other places. But personally, I don't think I asked any of the questions that we spoke about today in this interview. And I think I definitely could have benefited from being way more upfront, because then I would have a better idea on my future, some security of peace of mind where I would be in the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years. I think in terms of like legal questions, when it comes to the H1B lottery in itself, these are more nitty gritty questions, but people were wondering, how does the H1B process work in terms of how much demand is on the student in terms of payment or support? Is there anything they have to do to be, more favorable to be put in that lottery?
Obviously, it's upon the student or the employee to provide the information that is required, like copies of your passport, copies of your degrees, copies of your transcript, copies of your I-94, information like that.
Mm-hmm.
But as an employer, the employer obviously has to enter the candidate in the lottery. So there's work that needs to be done at their end, pay for the lottery ticket, enter you in the lottery. If the individual is selected in the lottery, then file a petition on their behalf, right? So all that falls on the employer. And immigration is an expensive thing to take on for the employer. So a lot of employers will delay it as much as they can or avoid it if they can, because they don't have to pay for it then. And I think if you are at a company that is saying, well, we'll do this if you pay for it, or if there's some cost sharing project going on, depending on what it is, it's probably illegal and you shouldn't be indulging in it anyway. The same for the green card process. I mean, think about it yourself. If an employer is not doing it, then there's even if you're selected in the H1B lottery, there's a maximum amount of time that you can work in the US on the H1B lottery. So if they haven't started the green card process for you, are they interested in retaining you long term?
Exactly. No, that's so fair. I don't think I know anyone in undergrad. Again, this is just me, who's been upfront about those questions. And when you really think back on it, those are such valuable pieces of information that can really help you succeed, not succeed. It determines almost your entire future. So really great that, we're chatting about these things. I think in the interest of time, your time as well, I just wanted to see if you had any other anecdotes for international students in the US right now. I know in terms of immigration, it's a little bit of a troubling time. Some students are home, some students are remote. Just any kind of pieces of advice you have, they don't have to be legal specific.
I would just remind everyone that if you leave the country, if you leave the US right now, you could be subject to additional scrutiny when you're coming back in the US. If your visa has expired, even though your I-20 is valid, the consulate in your home country might not be open, so you might not be able to receive a new visa stamp, a new F1 stamp, and so may not be able to return. If you're unable to return, you're not eligible to apply for OPT. You have to be physically in the US to apply for it. A lot of students went through this last year when dorms suddenly closed and students were asked to leave. A lot of them didn't have a place to live. This is a time you probably want to like maybe take a loan and like live out those next few months. And I think the other piece of advice I will give is this, that asking any of these questions are as crucial to your future if you're looking to build one in the US as what's the kind of work I'm going to do, what team am I going to be on, what is my growth potential? Because if you think about it, all of that is dependent on actually if you have work authorization. If you don't have work authorization, you could have a ton of potential and have nowhere to work. So
That's
I would
so
highly
fair.
advise you to prioritize asking these questions and making sure that the employer meets whatever requirements you have.
Honestly, such great piece of advice. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to come here and chat with us. I am going to ask, and feel free to share if it's something that's like in your bandwidth, if there are any career opportunities at Duolingo right now, if people were looking to apply or reach out. Is there, like, do you have any kind of knowledge on if there's open
Duolingo's,
positions?
I don't have 100% of that knowledge, but Duolingo is hiring. Duolingo's career section on their website has a lot of postings. Feel free to check it out. And if there's something of your interest, I encourage everybody to apply.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much
No
for
problem.
being here, and really appreciate your time.